And we're about to shine a positive local light on the housing issues across Australia, because this morning we are joined by Faith Housing Australia's CEO, Rose Thomson. Good morning, Rose.
Good morning, Ben, and good morning to your listeners.
Now, Rose, what kind of difference are faith communities making to housing in Australia?
Well, if we think about the current contribution, our members, which are faith-based organisations, community housing providers, have delivered 15,000 homes. Not only that, they go well beyond putting a roof over someone's head. They have supported 33,000 people in the last year needing homelessness services. And as you know, with the cost of living crisis, these numbers are growing rapidly. A distinction there is, imagine if that service was taken away from the community, then the government would have a big hole that the faith communities have always filled in different ways.
You just touched on there a couple of what sound like distinctives about faith communities and their involvement in housing in Australia. Before we come back to that, Rose, how long has Faith Housing Australia been going?
Well, in the 1990s, the Ecumenical Council looked around them and saw a rising number of people homeless and created a community housing provider, which in time they handed over to it. It became Ecclesia Housing, which became Amelie Housing, which is actually today St Vincent de Paul Society Australia Housing, or Vinnie's Housing, we like to call it for short. So that still exists today and is a significant player in the provision of both support services and housing. In 2010, they saw the need for a peak body, and it was at that point they carried on as Churches Housing. When I came in 3.5 years ago, it became Faith Housing Alliance to broaden the scope of the faith communities that wanted to provide housing, and now of course it's Faith Housing Australia.
So a bunch of name changes across three decades though of faith communities across Australia banding together to see what they can do about housing issues around the place. And Rose, you've already touched on some of the distinctives. What do you see as the key distinctives for faith communities helping out their local communities with housing?
Well, there's two or three key points there, I think, Ben. The first is that they've been around for a long time. The first record of community housing is Wesley Mission back in 1815.
Whoa.
Yes, and Baptist Cares that share 80 years. Salvo's housing is 140 years. So these are communities that have been serving their local community in this way for a long, long time.
That's making a big difference over a long period of time.
Yeah, well, that's centuries you're talking. You know, it's not a commercial operation that started up 40 years ago. And of course, they will be there for the long haul. So the second piece there is they don't just provide a home. They provide wraparound services that are very distinct from non-faith housing providers. This might be teaching English as a second language, bringing the local parish or mosque members onto the housing community and creating a very dynamic and vibrant supportive community. I know of one parish where there's volunteers that go in that work with the tenants to create the program for community engagement and what support the tenant is actually watching. So it's a very compassion-based wraparound support services.
Not so much profit-driven, let's say, Rose.
No, definitely not profit-driven, and oftentimes they're not supported for it. And of course, they will do what they can at all times because their heart is compassion-driven for those that are around them. So it's really a very big distinctive. The other piece there is the 40,000 volunteers of our members. Imagine, Ben, if that was taken out of local communities, what cost to government to replace that? It's significant. They also bring land with them, which is a little bit different. Now, we're talking places of worship now. Our faith-based organisations are aligned but separate entities, but they also have land acquisition programs so that they can look ahead to where the housing needs seem to be popping up. Of course, currently that's everywhere.
Sorry, I shouldn't laugh. I'm only laughing because, as we all know, there's like a massive statement of obviousness. There are housing issues all over the place. Rose, I'm speaking this morning with Faith Housing Australia CEO Rose Thomson. And Rose, as you know much better than me, diving into how to try to help people with housing struggles in Australia. What kind of advocacy work does Faith Housing Australia do?
So we're on the front foot all the time about supply. Our vision statement is Faith in Action, Homes for All. And we're really in pursuit of housing justice. So I see a really important need for it actually to be legislated as a human right. I think until we do that, we're going to be funding and issues that government have to play ball with. They're going to go to the whims of the electoral cycle, perhaps. And I think it's important because everything comes out of community flourishing, education wins, health program, everything comes out of safe, secure and affordable housing. If we don't have that, our communities cannot flourish. So I think it's critical that we focus on that in our advocacy. That means we're advocating for funding, we're advocating for different types of housing, we've got one hot issue at the moment, Ben, and it's around a planning issue. So the number of faith communities that have been looking around and recognising, we've got a bit of underutilised land over here in the land around our community, or we've got assets that we own that we could convert to either emergency housing or temporary accommodation. There's any number of things that people can do. Yet currently, the way places of worship are zoned in the housing SEP, housing is not a permissible use. And so it's one word to be added to the SEP. They did it for aged care, they did it for education, and so we're advocating strongly for that at the moment. Take the Anglicans as an example. They've currently got 85 sites sitting ready to have housing, but that planning SEP is stopping that.
Wow, just waiting to go. Rose, if anyone is just waiting to go, hearing you speak about faith communities getting involved with housing, how can they get involved with Faith Housing Australia?
Well, that's an interesting question because we play a role in, I feel, as like an incubator and a connector. And so, for example, we've had Catholic parishes, we've had one of the mosques call in. So what we do is start working with them about what the site might be able to do, what their mission is, because a key distinction between non-faith organisations providing housing and the work that we do in our members is that mission drive. And churches, mosques, all faiths really, Muslim Women Australia is a great example where they sit in the middle of Lakemba community and everything they do is a heart-based response to the need they see all around them. Now, they're not a place of worship, they're a faith-based organisation, but if any of your listeners are a member of a place of worship of any faith and they have underutilised land and assets, the first thing they can do is come connect with us and we will help them take those steps. We actually have a capacity building program that starts in November again this year, a pilot with the Department of Communities and Justice, where we take any interested faith communities around returning to mission. And sometimes, churches are looking, other places of worship are looking at how they might make commercial gain. If that's their heart, then they need to rethink their mission. Because most places of worship were established to care for those around them. And if they return to that, it may not be housing they end up doing, but we will certainly walk them through. And if any people are interested, they can call our office and attend in November for that special sort of work we do with them about how to talk to your board, if it's just a congregational member, for example. But if it's someone within the executive, and because there's a series of each faith has a different set of hierarchy to make a decision, so we work our way through with them. Often we return them like to the Sydney Catholic Diocese if it's a Catholic parish, and we work in a triad so we're like a connector and an incubator, if you like, but certainly they can consider these things because oftentimes they do have that land or assets.
Thank you so much for all of that. CEO of Faith Housing Australia, Rose Thomson. And for more information, head to fha.org.au on Hope 103.2.